And we're rolling. Welcome back. My name is Mick Hayes. That's Mick like Mick Jagger and Hayes like Isaac Hayes. I'm the internet's most invisible guitarist and singer. A man who hesitates to call himself a songwriter because I've met some songwriters and what I do is very different. I write songs to get things off my chest. And as I say, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Today we're dealing with the topic of budgeting an indie release. Kind of falls under just the music interest category, excuse me. I definitely snuck cookies and milk after lunch. Totally guilty. But I exercised all week, so in my head it made sense. Anyways, yeah, we're dealing with budgeting an indie release, which is obviously going to maybe not be that interesting to anybody else. But I'll tell you why it would be interesting, and you should listen, because if you were a part of the creation, I should say, of my last record called My Claim to Fame, I'm going to actually go over all of the bullet points on the things that went through that without any veil. So first we're going to start back for me at age 14. When I was 14, dear old dad gave me a 1973 Gibson ES335 in everyone's favorite poopy brown color. Now, I enjoyed the guitar, had a lot of fun with it, but sadly, the guitar was stolen. And not stolen from me. It was a stolen guitar, I should say, had the serial number removed. Now, I had had no reservations about it at that age, but unfortunately, as I got a little bit older, I felt guilty owning the guitar. Mostly because, again, these things are tools to me, and I'd feel awful if somebody stole one of mine. I would be really beside myself if that had happened to me. So it started to bother me. I did inquire as to where it came from. And for those of you that have kind of heard some of my earlier podcasts, Dad knew some people. That's all I'll say. Dad knew some people. He assured me that it wasn't a stolen guitar, that it was stolen at one time and it was recovered. I really don't know. Who could ever tell the truth on that story? So either way, it just started to bother me that I had it. And sometime later, I decided to part with the guitar because it bothered me that much. Actually, at one point, I haven't even spoken to a police officer about it, and he told me that that I could bring it in basically, and if anybody ever claimed it, then it would go back to them. But didn't even know where it was stolen from. So, anyways, I had the guitar for a number of years and ended up selling it to a friend who was in a local band. And thankfully it became his number one guitar. So I guess, and it was never going to be my number one guitar. So it was really cool that I was a 14-year-old kid with a vintage guitar and I had that interest level. And it's even cooler that it ended up being somebody's number one guitar, just a bad circumstance to live with on your conscience. That said, I had a few other of that model. And again, I already sitting here saying, did I say the model? It was a Gibson 335. Forgive me if I'm repeating that. But I had a few other of that model through the years. None that ever really kind of stuck with me. In most instances, that guitar is worth a lot of money, and it usually went under the bed for me. Almost like having money under the bed, just kind of socked away. And in the winter months and when kind of things were hard, so to speak, I would sell it to keep me from having to say, would you like fries with that? Which was my running joke. But by the time I was 40, or turning 40, excuse me, I had kind of got myself in a better position in life, and I had already been out to Norman's Rare Guitars once. So I made it kind of a plan to go out there when I was 40 years old and buy that guitar back and never, ever sell it again. As a matter of fact, I'm forgetting one quick facet of the story. I did buy a 1968 in a custom color sometime back in 2010. And again, as I said in the very first one of these podcasties, you guys are going to get to know me really well through the course of this. In one of my most cowardice moments through the course of my life, I had moved in with a girl because my mom was getting a divorce and needed somewhere to live. She moved back into the home that I was living in, and I moved in with said girlfriend. The relationship went completely awry, only a matter of months into the relationship, and I left during the day while she was gone. Yeah, not something I'm proud of. However, let me say it this way. Many, many years later, if I didn't choose that path, I wouldn't be here where I am today. So take that for what it's worth. But when the beautiful 1968 custom color sparkling burgundy guitar had to go up for sale again, it was just to kind of get myself back on my feet. So pardon that little mind lapse, memory lapse there. So when I was turning 40, which was in 2018, I took out a loan. These guitars are very expensive, by the way, very. I took out a $7,000 loan to get a guitar, to buy it on my 40th birthday and landmark that moment. And my wife and I flew out to California, went to Norman's Rare Guitars. Norman and the staff there were kind enough to grab 3 guitars and hold them for me from Norman's secret stash. And we got there and I picked one out of 3 that I absolutely loved. And it was the one that I chose. Now, here's where things really dig in, okay? So if you need to grab a drink, go ahead and grab a drink. I suggest a lot of great whiskeys from time to time. If you're having a cup of coffee, make sure it's black. That's all I'm going to say. But here's where we dig in. So I'm hanging out there, again, with Jen, who's awesome. Jen's always behind the camera if you watch any of their videos. Joel Whitehead, who's actually from Western New York, was in the repair shop there in restorations and such. Mark Agnesi, my friend who's now at Gibson and head of the brand experience, and then Norm were all there that day. These are all great people, and they've been extremely kind to me in my entire career of knowing them, I should say. And we're standing out in the parking lot, just kind of getting some fresh air, although it was very hot that day. I can remember that. Norm, of all people, and I say this all the time, Norm's kind of like everybody's really cool grandpa. And if you know the man through his videos, he's exactly the same off camera. And he's got a lot of great wisdom. He's been in a lot of great places in the music industry. And I knew he was going to have some wisdom for me. I just wasn't expecting this. So I was standing in the parking lot. If you can imagine it, again, it's kind of a, well, it is. It's a strip mall. And I'm kind of literally like kicking a parking, like the parking bumper to keep somebody from driving right through the front of the building. And I said, man, Norm, I'm just so glad to be here. I said, I'm really looking forward to, turning 40 this week and kind of slowing things down. And he said to me, what do you mean? I said, well, I've been pushing this train uphill basically by myself for a number of years. I've been doing this since 1998. So by the time I was 40, I was really close to 20 years, if not over. My math is terrible, by the way. We've covered that before too. But I said to him, I'm looking forward to slowing down. He said, I think you need to just the opposite. And damn, that hit me like a freight train full of dynamite. We, again, just exchange kind words and handshakes and hugs and high fives. And I left there that day, and my guitar was being shipped back home to me because I didn't want to buy it a plane ticket. And we went back to the hotel room, and I just remember that just hearkening. It was like echoing and just ringing in my ears. He thinks that I should do just the opposite. I literally took out a loan to buy a $7,000 guitar. My payments were $247 a month. Of all the numbers I can't remember, these are the numbers I remember the best. It's so funny. And he says, I think you should do better. You need to do the opposite. And I was like, oh, man. Excuse me. For the rest of the trip, that's all I could think about. And I remember kind of hinting around at breakfast to my wife that it was bothering me a lot what he said. And she said, well, it's been a while since you released any music, and it was. So it was actually 2015, I believe, was the last time I had released music at that time. So I came back home, waited for my guitar to arrive, and started to put the feelers out again, and contacted my internet friends down in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. I had one physical friend down there, somebody I knew from face to face, somebody I'd play with, and that was Will McFarlane. And Will introduced me to just about everybody else down there. And the contact I had was John Gifford, who was the studio engineer and manager down there. And unfortunately, and it was somewhere in June, that January beforehand, the owner of Fame Studios, Rick Hall, had passed away. So I lost my opportunity to work with Rick. And things were a little somber there for quite some time, and if you've ever seen the Muscle Shoals documentary, you know why. But if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest it. It's really, really great documentary. It's done very, very well. Usually it's free on some of the streaming platforms. I watch it from time to time, but this wasn't my interest in that. My interest in Muscle Shoals, and specifically Fame Studios, was the fact that it was on the back of so many of my records that I grew up listening to, and it was on in a lot of the 45s I had too. So I kind of thought to myself, I said, if I'm going to do something that grand, I'd been through Sun Studios and I'd been through some of the other famous studios, but Fame seemed to be the right one for me. Things seemed to be lining up. But again, I just spent an exorbitant amount of money on a guitar. It's really hard to kind of put this whole thing together. I think I can do it. And I'm kind of talking myself into it. And then I remember sending out an email asking what available recording dates and tracking dates were. And everything seemed to line up with my schedule. Now we're in summer. Things are really busy for me. I'm usually playing anywhere from 4 to 5 nights a week, just within a 3-hour span of my front door. Things were really healthy back then. They're much different now. So we got down there. Well, we decided to go down there. Went down there with enough money of my own to record a 45. That was the plan. We're going to do 2 songs. Those 2 songs were Ramona and Parking Lot Romance. Those were the first 2 songs we recorded, and the first of them was Ramona. And I remember thinking to myself how fantastic the musicians were. Now, mind you, I'd never met anybody. I pulled into town. I had a Lincoln MKX. I pulled into town with my New York plates, which are hard to miss, especially down here in the South when we've got 1 plate versus 2. So I've got 2 New York plates on my car. I don't know, this thing keeps cutting out, sorry. 2 New York plates on my car. I've got my Coach man bag, which, everybody was already going to make fun of in the first place, and you're all shallow anyway. I've got my New York attitude, my sunglasses on. I pull into town. It was like a scene from My Cousin Vinny, But I walked through the side door of Fame. I did not take the tour a day ahead of time. I did not walk through the front door. I didn't want to see any of the stuff hanging on the walls. Now, again, Fame Studios, the people that you would know that have recorded there are exponential. Let's just go over a couple of quick ones. Little Richard, Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, and the list goes on from there. You've been listening to records and music that's come out of Fame Studios your entire life. The first ever recording of the Allman Brothers Band happened in Studio B. That is the type of significance we're talking about here. And I personally believe that my music at that time was the best it had ever been from me, and it warranted that level of respect. So I pulled into town, came in through the side door, like I said, didn't freak myself out at all. We tracked the 2 tunes. That town closes up pretty early. It's pretty sleepy by 8 o'clock. And I remember just driving around after the end of the session, thinking to myself, like, wow, it cannot end here. This was too easy. This was too good. 45s are a tough sell in the first place, especially in today's day and age. What if I recorded a full album here? No, let's just do an EP. Let's just do an EP. EPs are 5 songs. But man, I'm 800 miles away. That means I got to go all the way back home and come back and do more. Because I got to go home to raise money. I got to work to, it's like there were so many things that was going through my mind. So I decided to, at that time, go back home and consider doing another EP. And I came down a second time, this time in fall. So I believe I was there in July. I could look at tracking lists, but let's just say for the sake of the discussion, I was there in July. I came back in fall. I know it was fall because I had recently written Autumn Romance, which is on the record, and the timing was perfect. So I figured, why not include that in the session? It actually, in my opinion, if you listen to the record, that one sticks out the most because that's more of a Philadelphia soul song than the rest. But I was there and we did the remaining, it was, I think, 5 tunes. So now we're at 5, 6, 7 tunes. Wow, my memory is better than I expected it to be on this topic. So we did 7 tunes total now. And I was like, all right, that's a healthy EP. That's going to be a tough one. Why is it going to be a tough one? Well, because you can't charge full price for it. And it would seem really hard to sell it cheap for how good it was, in my opinion. So again, sitting in the hotel room, just kind of working through my thoughts. And I said, again, I just love it here so much. I love everybody here so much. I mean, these guys are amazing. They're taking me out on their boat, on free days and in free time. And we're going out doing this. We're talking about coming back and fishing season. And we're having, laughs and dinners. And they're bringing me up on stage at local gigs. And it was really kind of a part of the fabric for the time that I was there. So I said, again, it can't end here. And it was, I believe at that time that I decided that I was going to ask for crowdfunding. I was going to look into it. Now, I'd done crowdfunding once before on my recovery album. We did a Kickstarter program, which worked well. But things were definitely a little bit different now as far as the world goes. And the interest around what I was doing was a little faded. Because again, I had just been playing around, around the neighborhood. I wasn't doing any big major tours or anything like that. And I wasn't, I was just playing within 3-hour shot of my front door, like I said earlier. So I looked into crowdfunding. We tried a Kickstarter again. I set the Kickstarter fund, I set the fund point a little higher than I probably should have. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what Kickstarter does, you pledge money to Kickstarter, but it doesn't take money until the goal is met, okay? So we never met our goal. So to the people that did pledge, I didn't have that available to me. And at the time, speaking of pledge, there was a website that a lot of artists were using, including signed artists, called Pledge Music. I remember, I think it was Kenny Loggins with Blue Sky Riders, or maybe perhaps that was Kickstarter, but even like big name acts were using crowdfunding at that time just because record labels aren't what they used to be. They don't give you the budgets. You don't get a $250,000 budget to, rent a ping pong table and hang out at, Capitol Studios for the day. Those privileges were, first of all, kind of abused, from what I've been told, and secondly, they were going away just because the industry was changing so much. And it's kind of funny to say this, but that website, Pledge Music, the headlines were literally at that time that Pledge Music was taking money and not paying out to the artists, which was like a big scandal. So I didn't want to be, obviously, I don't want anything to do with that. Last thing I want any mom or aunt or uncle or relative or just a fan of what I do or a friend to donate money to me through an intermediary and me not get the money, So we didn't do Pledge Music. So what I did was came out on social media and said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm putting up a GoFundMe. If you want to get involved, please do. If you want to give $5, give $5. You want to give 5,000, give 5,000. Whatever you can give at that time, I can guarantee you're going to get at least a digital copy of the release. And then if anybody wants CDs or vinyl copies or anything like that, we can go from there. And I kept it really even. I let people know, like so-and-so would give $50 and I would take a picture of my receipt in a gas station and be like, I just filled up my gas tank thanks to whoever it was, for their donation. I kept it really honest, first of all, but I kept it really transparent. I wanted people to know that really where this is going. And that's probably the last, that's the last time I was really that honest about things, because I'll tell you the truth. Because of the timing of all this and the way this all came together, some very jealous, we'll call them, but childish on top of it, people who were watching me from afar started putting together pieces that weren't the truth. Now, we'll get into this one day in a full episode. But basically, they saw me buy a guitar, and then they saw me asking people for money, saying that I was putting out a record. And their timeline was off by almost a whole year. So I put up the GoFundMe in fall sometime, if I'm remembering that correctly. And almost a year later, we had raised $10,000. Okay. The guitar was $7,000. Like I said, I had a loan for the guitar. That was done in the loan I got in May. I bought the guitar in June. We started the record in July. So I was accused at that time of taking people's money and buying a guitar. Which, again, your timeline is completely off. There was no money. There was nowhere near the amount of money to buy that guitar. It took a whole year to raise $10,000. But anyway, that's something we'll go into much, much later. And I'll give you an earworm. Those people actually started an anti-MICK Facebook group aimed directly at me. And we'll discuss that one day in a full episode. But back to the recording of My Claim to Fame. So some of these things, I don't know if I'm going to ruffle any feathers. If I do, kind of too bad. A lot of these people aren't necessarily in my corner that much anymore. I don't hear from them. I'm doing my best to kind of get back in the race at this point. I just wrote a lyric actually on a new song called "I Lost My Place in the Race." So we're really going to talk about that kind of stuff in upcoming episodes. But either way, studio costs. This part of it, there's no secret here, okay? We're going to go over studio costs, engineer costs, mastering, all that stuff right now. So again, do you need a second drink? Get one. Fame as a studio. Studio A is $1,500 a day, okay? We used 5 full days in the studio. That's $7,500. Studio B is a little bit cheaper. Studio A has the sound that I was looking for. Engineer costs, $350 a day. Okay, again, times 5 days, that's $1,750. Somebody had to write the charts. For those of you that have never listened to any of my podcasties before, I can't read or write music, so I'll have to pay somebody to write that out for the musicians. Chart cost is $50 per song times 10 songs. That's $500. Musician costs. It was basically an 8-piece band every song. There was, basic rhythm section, female backup singers, horn sections, all that stuff. Basically $850 per song times 10. That's $8,500. Union fees. Yes, you have to pay union fees to musicians that are in the union. Thankfully, down there, the only union fees I had to deal with were with the Fantastic Singers, which was only $30 per session times 10, so that's $300. Now, recording's done. You leave there. Those were the hard costs to doing the recording. Now, that doesn't include, again, driving 800 plus miles in one direction to get there. Gas, food, tolls. Doesn't include my hotel rooms. Doesn't include any of those other things. So you can see kind of first of all, my frustration with those people, for lack of a better term, who thought I was taking other people's money and spending it on a guitar when these were the types of costs that I was incurring to put out a new record. Now, so that is the recording process done. Sitting in your hotel room, you got a thumb drive that has just cost you thousands of dollars. It's only a thumb drive. There's nothing fancy looking about it at all. It'd be one thing if this were the, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I was looking at a stack of recording tapes, but that's not the case here. I literally have a thumb drive and a backup with all my music on it, all of our hard work. And now it's got to go to phase 2. So phase 2, first part of phase 2 was mix engineer. Now again, you can hire anybody to do mix engineers. As crazy as this may sound, if AI keeps going the way it is, we'll have AI mix engineers, which is something I won't do. I believe in employing a person in this position because it's a second opinion on everything that's done. In my personal preference is that they didn't hear anything. So because I'm a big vinyl nut and I still read the back of jackets all the time, I loved every time I was listening to a record that was mixed by Kean Riordan. And I just kind of, again, Hail Mary pass for the guy that knows nothing about football. I know what that means. And I sent him a message. I went right to his website, and his website headline said, Grammy Award losing mix engineer. And I was like, this is my guy. That is my personality, literally, on the internet. Let's get him a call. So I got a hold of him, and he said to me this. He said, send me some tracks. And I sent him some tracks. And he's like, absolutely, man. I'd love to work with you. And here's my cost. Now that cost, mix engineer. You can hire, again, a $300 mix engineer, and you get what you get. Kean's, one of my favorite mix engineers would be Chad Blake. Chad Blake, from what I've been told, is over $1,500 a song. Times 10. Yes. Very expensive. These are the kind of budgets that were birthed out of, again, the $250,000, that they paid to make, a Matchbox 20 record in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's when, that's what was going on, So Chad Blake, $1,500 a song, not going to be able to do it. Kean, who's from a similar school, but has a flair of his own, which I really, really loved. Kean's price was $1,000 a song. And I thought that was reasonable. I did. I thought for what he was going to do, it was great. I had some flights credits, so I flew out to California to meet him face to face. Before you sign over the check to somebody for $10,000, I'm going to look this guy in the eye and make sure he's A, on the level, and B, in my corner, which at the time you 100% was. We went to Gus's Fried Chicken, ate like kings that day, which is not saying much when you go to a fried chicken joint. All you're doing is eating fried chicken and drinking beer and eating French fries. But we had a really cool hang. We did. And he got my vote and he got my job. He got the work. And he killed it. The first song he mixed was No Second Chances. And when I heard it back, I'd have paid him more, truthfully. After that, we go to mastering. I asked him to introduce me to Brian Lucy. Now, Brian Lucy, through the process of all of this recording, Brian Lucy's probably my number 1 or number 2 friend that I've kept through the whole process of this recording. Brian's accolades are super impressive. I knew Brian from the Black Keys records and stuff like that, but still, I just love his ear and I love his attention to detail, and he is so gear orientated. It was everything to me. And I won't discuss Brian's rates, but I'll tell you, based on the fact that, again, I went to his house, hung out at his house in LA, and we spent an entire day together just hanging out. Man, that was a really, really special day for me. And Brian, if you ever listen to these, man, thank you again, just for being in my corner all these years. But Brian's rates were absolutely magical. Based on everything that we've said so far, now we're going to do a lacquer master. I'm a vinyl nut. I have to do a lacquer master. I'm not going to do it the newfangled way, which is they just kind of take your digital files and make a lacquer master from that. I didn't want to do that. I contacted Bernie Grunman Mastering with some help from Brian at that point, and who put me in touch with Chris Bellman. Chris Bellman did Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette and a number of other titles you would know. It's the same way as I've mentioned everything else here before. Chris was awesome. Talked to him on the phone. Didn't get a chance to fly out there and meet him. I was out of flight credits at that point. And we put that in place. The lacquer master was $1,300, done and delivered to Gotta Groove Records, which they did the physical copies. Gotta Groove Records did 300 pressings of My Claim to Fame, cost $1,900 and some change. Physical copies of the CDs cost me $650 plus shipping and some change. We used a photographer, obviously, in Muscle Shoals, and a photographer for the album cover and all that stuff. That was anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 if we're allocating enough money, and again, for the in-studio stuff. Artwork was $500 plus, copyright fees $1,500, and then I hired a publicist on a 6-month contract, which was $1,000 a month, so $6,000 total. As we get to the end of that spiel, that is $42,000 plus to put out My Claim to Fame. That doesn't include food. It doesn't include travel, flights, tolls, food in the airport, drinks on the airplane. It doesn't include rental cars in LA. It includes none of that. It is just the payment to the musicians, the studio, the people that worked on it, and the artwork. That's it. $42,000. Where did you come up with that money, Mick? I never thought you'd ask. The first $10,000, thank you again to everybody that gave on GoFundMe. I had people that literally took me to goals that gave well over what I thought that they can give. And then there were people that were kind enough to do, as I said, they gave $5 and I gave them a digital copy of their record when it was finished. Sorry, I'm out of breath giving the spiel right now, the spiel. And then the rest of it, I took out 2 personal loans. And everything equated to, I was literally holding almost, just personally, almost $42,000 in debt. Again, take the $10,000 off the top, but that took a year to raise that $10,000. That $10,000 never hit my bank account. It was a steady stream of income that just helped pay for the beginning stages of that. I took out 2 personal loans and I put the rest on credit cards or paid cash. That was it. That was how it was done. I was in Cleveland at Gotta Groove Records in February, I believe it was, picking up the physical copies. No, it was February. Picking up the physical copies of the record to be released on Record Store Day in March of 2020. And my darling wife, who's stuck with me through all of that, and thank you to those of you that have, because we're coming up on 35 minutes. You've stuck with me so far too. Contacts me and I'm elated. I'm glowing. I've got my physical record, the thing we've just worked years on our doorstep, in my hands. It's on the doorstep of my hotel room for the night. And she says, it looks as if they're going to shut down New York. And as for this flu they're talking about right now, she says they're going to shut down New York. And she goes, and the last thing I want is you in, $150 a night hotel rooms while you can't get home and I can't be with you. So that was where it ends. Everything got put on hold. My claim to fame, with your help and my family's help, and my constant commitment to this dream that I've had since I was a young boy, is still the best thing I ever put together. It's still the best thing I ever built. And people, as I said, tried to tear it down. Nothing I did or could do, or the publicist could do at that time, could contend with the headlines of 2020. I still hope every day that something happened overnight, that I roll out of bed and, you know, whomever, Chris Stapleton, whoever's like gonna get what I did, you know, somebody found it on a late night scrolling, you know, frenzy, and came across some guy they never heard of, you know, and read a couple of interviews. I still hope that someday it'll have a resurgence 4 years after it was released. But at the moment, those are hopes, and I haven't stopped promoting it. I haven't stopped being proud of it. But something happened last weekend that I have to just kind of show my hand and hand over just another piece of my heart. Now, it's hard for me to tell you these things nowadays because so much of what happens on the internet and social media seems like name dropping. And there are times you literally have to say who you were with and what you were doing for effect. I mean, like, I've been inspired by, you know, things in nature, you know, and I've been inspired by, you know, songs and music and whatever it is. But I'm just going to say it. I was invited to Ocean Way Studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, over the weekend, specifically on Friday last week, because my friend Josh Smith and Joe Bonamassa were in town rehearsing before they went on tour. And again, that's not a name drop. Those are people that I spend time with, and Josh specifically has been in my life for well over 10 years. They're phenomenal musicians. Josh is a terrifying guitar player. Terrifying. He's so good. But again, I got an impromptu tour of Ocean Way Studio, and I got to talk a little bit with my friends, and I got to talk a little bit with the studio manager and the engineer. And it's been on my heart for quite some time that I'm putting this off. And that time, I think, has come to an end. As a helicopter goes over. I apologize for the extra noise, but we're having a moment. I'm ready to do it again. It seems like something that is like, maybe this is bad timing, or maybe it's perfect timing. Maybe it's the exact perfect timing. I've had so much turmoil in my life over the last 6 months, and the music reflects that. Maybe it's time to be 100% honest. Maybe what the industry today is looking for is that. Something that's not mechanical, something that's not computerish, something that's real, raw, just, you know, literally bleeding in between the grooves. And yes, there will be another record. I've had to be real with myself on this, though, and I'll remind you from the first episode that Move the Needle Music, in the 4 years that it's been alive, has helped me pay away that debt. I'm happy to say I'm about $10,000 in debt, and that's it. That's all that's left from my claim to fame. And some of that debt I've recreated again because of moving here, and there were just costs that was like, that's, you know, it's easier to put it on a credit card right now. Just go ahead. But interest rates are just brutal, and I don't want to go through that again. I sincerely don't think, based on what I went through with the backlash of the last crowdfunding, I don't think I'll do crowdfunding again. I don't. It's probably, I don't know, maybe people are just over that now. But I've given myself a completely different budget, and I've given myself a very, very hard, long look in the mirror at limit. And like, that's it. It ends there. If the record's done at that amount, it was all you could afford to do, dude. That's it. The rest is up to God and all the other things within the universe where the planets need to align in order for you to be somebody. And I'm talking to you again, MICK HAYES. So what's the takeaway? Here we are coming up on 40 minutes. The takeaway is this. Some of you have been getting to know me better, which is kind of how I finish these podcasties. I've showed you my hand. I let you know exactly what it costs to make a record. If you're an indie artist thinking about doing it yourself, do it at a level that you're comfortable with. My belief in me, which is huge, took me over $40,000, and it really pushed my limitations. Now, mind you, if the world had been normal in 2020, I'd have paid that off probably within a year, maybe a year and a half. That would have been normal. You know, a couple of $5,000 gigs would have took care of that pretty fast. But nonetheless, everything was different. So I've given myself an interesting budget. That budget, and I'm not going to hide any of this stuff. I think maybe at this point, maybe it helps to be more, forthcoming and open about this. I've given myself a $10,000 budget to make this record. And remind you, the mix budget on that record was $10,000. I'm giving myself 10 grand. That's it. It's got to happen on the studio floor. I'm probably not going to hire a publicist again. I'm not going to do a lot of grandiose things. A lot of that was great for, in between sips of beer at the bar. When I'm talking with my record guys and they read the back of my record and they're like, "Oh my God, you had this done at Bernie Grundman Mastering?" I'm like, absolutely. I'm nerdy like you are, so that's why I went that route. And that step I would do over again. I won't cut that corner. So that's probably $1,500 today because, again, inflation from this, most of this was done in 2018, 2019. So inflation's going to be a little rough, but I've given myself a budget and I'm sticking to it. The farthest I'll go is $12,000. And I told myself that's it. 12,000 done. And that's like $10,000 to make the record, another $2,000 just for marketing and such. Not marketing, production, like to actually get physical copies. And then that's it. I'm drawing the line. I can't. I'm not going to be that far in debt again at almost 50, Well, I'll be 46 in June. So maybe I shouldn't round up on that one. So the takeaway is if you're a musician and you're considering putting out your own release, I'll encourage you to proceed with caution. But if you're somebody that believes in me, I think we're going to begin a real interesting journey here very soon. I've already spoken with the studio twice, and I'm going to pursue some help from some friends and do all I can to put something out that's just absolutely amazing and trumps, tops, just blows the last record out of the way. Not obliterate it. Like, I don't want to cover it, so to speak. It's not going to be a happy, soulful record, I'll tell you that much. But we're embarking on a weird journey together, and you're part of it. And I hope you're excited. The other takeaway I want to give you is if you believe in yourself. I think that this is the t-shirt, this is the bumper sticker for me lately. Really, if you believe in yourself, whatever that looks like in your creative mind, if you believe in yourself, give yourself that give yourself that budget to chase after your dreams. Don't overextend yourself as I did, but chase after your dreams. Do not, they will haunt you. They will keep you up. Take that from me. In my song, So Blue, I said that they tried to give me pills to sleep, but even in my dreams, I moan and weep. That's it. It will keep you up. If you don't chase after your dreams, they will keep you up. But give yourself a healthy budget. Just don't overextend yourself. Don't jeopardize your relationships and friendships over it. And at that, I'll wish you luck. Wish me luck. Because, man, this is like the 5th podcasty. I've gotten to the point where I actually do enjoy doing this. It is helping me. And as I close these, I like to say I hope that it helps us both. Now, So I hope that this helps us both. And as it has been, bringing us close together, I hope it does continue to bring us closer together. And we'll draw the line there. I don't know what the next episode's going to be about, but we'll be together. That's all that matters. So thank you very much.